We lived in a we call down the meadow. There was only two houses, our house and our next door neighbor, the Glodes, and there were no roads there, and we had to go to church. Went to church. There was a path. We had to follow a path to go to church, had to get to the to the where the church was up on the hill, and so one time uh, we were coming back from church, and my dad was always the leader, of course, going through this path through the woods. And then my brothers, myself, my mom, and we're walking along there, and we're talking, and first thing, all of a sudden my dad stopped, and he went, "Oh!" And we stopped, and we thought, what's going on, We stopped, and we looked over where he was looking. And we looked like that, and we seen a albino deer. He was so beautiful. And the big one, the horns were, oh my God, what a beautiful creature. He was walking along there through the woods, and then he stopped, and then he turned around and he looked at us. And we just stood there and, look at the deer. My dad went, shh, like that, so we kept quiet. And we stood there and watched this deer. And this deer turned around, he looked at us for about a minute, and then he put his head way up, and he took off running through the woods. White as can be. I never seen a creature so beautiful. So anyway, I just had to tell you that story to start out. There was a mill there down the meadow that employed quite a few people on the reserve, and my late husband used to haul logs. He had a team of horses, and he used to haul logs to the mill, from the woods to the mill. And he employed some people too. Bringing back memories, as you know. Yeah, we had dances every so often. There were a lot of fiddlers. George Hood was a fiddler. Richard Bass, I call him Richard Robin, he was a fiddler. Charlie Francis, Levi Paul, and there was a lot of people playing. And there was another one that was really good, I forget his name. But whenever we had dances, he was always there, played the fiddle. And there was one old man, I think his name was Joe Mason. Joe Mason, he was a fiddler. Oh, he was good, I think. But if he'd play the fiddle, he'd be talking to somebody and still play the fiddle and still have a conversation with somebody, and the people would be dancing around having a ball. He was very talented. There's something very important that we should keep doing today. On New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, a person will come over to my father's place where we lived down the meadow, and this person would come in the house, shake hands, and wish us a happy New Year, and sit down, have a cup of tea, and stuff like that, and really happy, cause it's a new year, we're celebrating New Year. And then would go to the next house, Mrs. Glode's house, too. They'd do the same thing. And they had a gun with them. They'd shoot the gun, And they'd go walk across the meadow, go to the next house, walk through the woods, and they would do the same thing all through the reserve. And when that person leaves the house, you could follow him if you want to. But in the end, there's about 10, 15 people following this man that started everything. And happy. And if you had an enemy, somebody that you didn't get along with, you shake hands with them, and you think about how foolish you were to be unfriendly with each other, and you're friends all over again. That's something that we should really do today. Yeah. Preservation today is different compared, of course. People are educated, they got jobs, they have cars, the transportation is good, and the roads are good, It's a lot of difference. But we've been through, we didn't have nothing. You know, if we want to go somewhere, we walked. Well, get groceries in Shubby, walked all the way down, buy our groceries, lug our groceries, walk all the way back home again. Think nothing of it, you know. We're used to it. My dad sang hymns, and he was sort of a spiritual person. And when somebody died in Cambridge, my dad got a letter, and he says, "We got to go to Cambridge because one of our relatives passed away down Cambridge." So what happened, he hired a truck. And we always sat in the back of the truck. You know, in those days you could, but I don't think it's allowed today. Oh, we'll be waving at people sitting in the back. All the way to Cambridge. Or cuddle up close, keep warm, you know. So anyway, we got in Cambridge, and there was an elderly person that passed away. And they had a fire going. We were just little. They had a fire going outside in the nighttime, and me and my brother and my sister Isabel, we went outside and stood by the fire with the people, you know. And this elderly man, he had crutches, you know, and that's the only way you could get around. So, he was an elderly man, and he was telling stories, you know, we're storytellers. And while he was telling stories, you know, he was sort of a magician, sort of. A very mysterious person he was, we thought in those days, you know. And all of a sudden, his head turned right around like that. He was facing you, and all of a sudden his head turned, and then he, well, dear God. Me and my brother said, "Oh my God, get out of here, let's get out of here." We took off. But there was a trick to it. We didn't know it at the time, but there was a trick to it, you know. But it looked so real that his head turned right around like that. Holy. I remember his name so well.
Yeah.
Shall I say it?
You go ahead.
His name was Dominic Bradford. Yeah. And he was an elderly man, and he was friendly as could be. Next time, somebody else died in Cambridge, same place. Mm-hmm. So we went to Cambridge, my dad, Mom, and, you know. We got in Cambridge, and we heard the man that, Dominic Bradford, he passed away. So we went to his funeral. And he was in his casket, and we were teenagers then. And first time I seen Ben Morris, because he lived in Cambridge, we lived in Shubby. And I seen Ben Morris, and of course my husband later on in years, but we were only teenagers at the time. And my husband and my brother and two more other guys that were teenagers, they had to go in and pay, respects to the man that was laid in his casket. So anyway, they went inside, and just when they reached the casket, the cover closed like that. It just slammed right down like that. And my late husband, of course, being just a teenager, he just jumped like that and he took off. Yeah, let's get out of here, boys. Everybody took off. I don't know how that happened. There was no explanation. We didn't stick around to find out the explanation. Maybe somebody pushed on it or something, you know, because we were just coming and going all the time. Yeah. But that's another spooky story. I could come up with a lot of spooky stories. I remember being sick. I didn't know. I woke up one morning and I wasn't feeling good at all. Of course, I was just a child, and I was crying, and my mother came and she told my dad that I was sick, and my dad said, he said, it was in the wintertime. So he looked at me and he thought, scratched his head, thought for a moment. Okay. He put on his jacket and his boots. There was a lot of snow on the ground. And he went outside and he went to the fir tree. And you know, the fir trees, the first three, they're like this. Well, he didn't destroy the tree at all. He just took that first part and he brought it in house. And he gave it to Mom, and Mom knew just what to do with it. I didn't know what they did, but anyway, she fixed it up and she fixed me a drink, and I was sipping on it. And she made it taste good, put sugar in it, you know. I drank it, and my God, somebody, my dad mentioned something about vitamins. At that time, I didn't know what vitamins was, but I remember the word vitamins. Anyway, after I drank that, I started feeling better. And gee whiz, in no time I was out of bed, and I was out there fighting with my brothers and sisters. Just, you know, that's fast medicine. My God, it got me out of bed and you know, uh, played with my brothers and sisters and everything. Yeah. So, and my dad used to go out in a swampy area and bring some roots. I don't know what they were, but he would pick them and put them away for the winter. Gold thread, my dad, no, my mom picked a lot of gold thread. Because down the meadow, there's a lot of medicines down there. There's swampy area, you know, and it's wet and a lot of moisture. When it comes to advising the young people, the best thing to do is to tell them to follow the footsteps of their elders, parents, cousins, or whatever. And keep up your culture. Keep your language. Learn. If you don't know it, learn it. Because it's important, you know. It's very important. One of the most important things in our culture is our language. Keep educating yourself. Don't be at a standstill. Keep educating yourself. No matter, you know, you have to go to school, try to get to university, you'll only be happy with yourself. If you do that, then you'll be happy with yourself. Then you can say, I did it on my own. I feel good, you know. So, you know, do the best you can. Like I said, follow the footsteps of your elders. They're the ones that are doing so good. Right on.
I was a lucky kid when I think about it now. As a little girl, we lived in St. John, New Brunswick, and of course we always went back to visit my grandmother because she worked for the train station. And of course my Aunt Rita, she was a championship tap dancer. She won competitions for tap dancing. And so she taught me how to tap and she taught me how to step dance. And she said, this will come in handy for you one day. And I'm like 5 years old, 6 years old. And then around the train station, there was a mirror that stood on the wall about that size all the way around. And then there's a door where they come in from outside where the train stops and people are coming in. And so she has a radio there, and so she's showing me how to do the different types of steps. And so I'm doing them, and I'm tapping with her, and I'm learning how to do these dances because I did it for a long time with her. And that particular night, when we're dancing, all these people come in, and she says to me, don't stop. She says, keep dancing. So, of course, I listened to her, and I kept dancing because we're together, and I'm watching her feet through the mirror. So I'm doing exactly what she says and twirling and doing all this stuff. And then people start throwing change at us. So I told Aunt Rita, let's do it again. She said, no, once is enough. In July, they would have the July picnic. And to raise money, they would have box socials. So everybody would run around looking for shoe boxes, any kind of boxes that they could get together. And then my mother made bread, and of course she made her pies. And Annie Brooks showed every one of the guys how to make flowers. Like Victor Brooks was really good at making these roses. And Annie would take the roses, and she had this wax on top of the stove, and she would dip them in there. And then she would stand them up on styrofoam so that they would dry. And then my father would be sitting there listening to all these guys talking. And of course, I wasn't allowed in. My mother would say, nope, you got to stay on the other side with the kids. So every once in a while, I would sneak a peek to see what they were doing. And then they would be sitting there and they would be serenading my mother. My God, what was that song? Paper Rosie. And they would be sitting there singing this song to my mom, Paper Rosie. I remember that song, and I have it on one of my CDs. And every time I hear that song, I can see all these people. They're all young, and they're all making flowers and having tea and with a piece of pie. And my father sitting there laughing. And then I remember my mother and Annie talking. Violet Lewis was a beautiful girl. Oh my Lord, that woman was pretty. I can remember admiring her and saying, when I grow up, I hope I look like her. Because she was so pretty. And this was at the picnic. They used to have they would build a floor. And they would have square dances there. And so what my mother and Annie would do, they would take Violet's coat and one of them would wear it. And she would take off with John. Then she was supposed to come back and they get caught. I said, oh my God, Mom, you did that? She said, yeah, we did that. I said, Hollywood had more houses than Church Street. And then Burma Road, like that seemed really far away for us. But Burma Road is a place where we were never allowed to go. Still to this day, I don't understand why we weren't allowed to go, but we weren't allowed to go to Burma Road. And I said, why? And at Burma Road, there was only like maybe 4 houses up there. It wasn't very many. I can remember Dad driving up there to pick somebody up to go grocery shopping. And I remember seeing the houses there. And as you went down towards Brown Flats, there was houses down there as well. Gosh, I can't remember who lived down there. The Knockwoods lived down there. Irvin Knockwood lived down there with his wife and children. And there was Ira Glow's family lived down there. And then, of course, there was a house that Becky's parents had, and they left it. And then they moved up by the church. And I remember going to visit. No, we had to sell Christmas cards. And at that time, we caught whooping cough. And I was all better. And the community had heard about it. So here we are, Becky and I and a couple of other kids, and we're selling these Christmas cards. And we went to Irvin Knockwood's house, and his wife, Annie, she had the broom. She hit us with the broom. Cannot you go to get my kid sick? Of course, we didn't know. We were running away because of this broom. Oh my God, it was so funny. I thought, oh God, what kind of woman is this? I went home and told my mother she had the broom. Oh, we're scared that our kids are going to get sick and get that whooping cough. I said, oh my God. And that was awful. Yeah. It really was, because they put us in a room with dark curtains, and they put stuff on us. Oh, it was horrible. And I'm thinking, what kind of stuff is it? It was molasses and something else. It was sticky. And I thought, oh my God, but we were sick. No doctor came to us. I think the language is extremely important. I think that the language that's being taught at the school, I think that should continue, because it's important to have your language. That is why Quebec pays their people, or pays people to go there. It gives them a lot of money to go to Quebec, and they get like lots of money, and it's for the language. They keep the language going. It's too bad we couldn't do that for the res, so that the language could be kept going. The language is really important because it makes you the individual who you are, because you can think in that language. Hugh, who was Ojibwe, he could understand the language, and he would say to me, I am so blessed that I met you, because I can understand your father. It means a little bit different, but when I connect the two, it's the language that makes us the people, and it shows me that we come from the same hereditary line. So I think it's important that we have our language. History, more has to be done on the history. I think a lot of the information that is put out there is false. It's almost like making a movie, and they bring out all of these wild Indians. I think now we're getting the truth, and it's important that that comes out. I remember sitting in a classroom and crying because they were talking about the savages. Well, now, when they talk about our people, they talk about something that's substantial. And they talk about the Noel Doucets, the past leaders like your father, for example, Reggie Maloney. I think they provide something for the community. Like my dad provided something. Stephen Knockwood did the same thing. So there is a history here. It would be nice if that could be looked into at the history of the leaders that we have here, because I think it has to be passed on, and it has to be kept, like the language. And I'm happy to be here. My ultimate goal is someday in the future, I hope to do it, and that is to help our elders. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to do something. I'm going to do that to make sure that something good comes out of my life for somebody else. I don't know what it is.